Good morning and welcome back to this week's Eastern Mediterranean Times podcast. I'm your host, Martin Mont.
And I'm your host, Joshua Litke.
This is brought to you by the Institute of Eastern Mediterranean Studies in Boston in association with Emmanuel College, Boston. And jumping right into our top story today, terror in Turkey as a suicide bombing rocks the country's capital, Ankara. The group, the PKK, which is a known terrorist organization out of Turkey, detonated a suicide bombing which injured 2 police officers and resulted in the fatalities of both bombers. And this took place right outside the Ministry of Internal Affairs in Ankara.
Yeah, so even though these attacks didn't result in any fatalities of bystanders or police specifically, the attack is significant as it's showing that there's a lot of frustration from Kurdish extremists in Turkey about the current government policies, as well as the extreme gaps in security in Ankara, considering these terrorists were able to go so far into the security zone.
And it definitely does say something about the fact that the attack happened right in front of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which is the ministry in charge of domestic security and protecting the Turkish people from what they would consider terrorist attacks, such as this one. You should also note that these attacks happened on the same day, Sunday, in which the Turkish parliament, is going to be reconvening for the first time. So that's going to be delayed as well due to the attacks.
Yeah.
All right, now shifting over to Greece. Greece has been hit with yet another climate event.
Yeah, so Greece was hit with a second extreme storm, Storm Elias, which has caused heavy rain and severe flooding in the city of Volos, and that's resulted in a lot of property damage in the area. This comes after Storm Daniel caused extreme flooding that resulted in the death of 17 people and crippled Greece's agricultural center. These storms are coming off the tail end of a summer filled with wildfires across the country of Greece, and these events have been linked to climate change, which has become increasingly present in the area. The Greek government has promised to rebuild the impacted areas and invest in measures to curb and adapt to the climate change crisis.
Yeah, and governments all around the world are going to be dealing with this as well. This is not just a regional problem. Greece has experienced many events with this magnitude this year, but the same type of flooding happened in New York City just last week.
Indeed.
The difference is the government's ability to respond and how effectively that response is received by the people. Greece's response has not been as prominent.
Yes.
And now moving over, NATO is increasing security presence in Kosovo after an attack last week where 30 insurgency fighters got in a shootout with police in northern Kosovo. And Serbia has decided to build up their military presence at the border.
Yeah, it's going to be important to keep tabs on the United States and Russian governments' responses after this incident, as Russia is closely aligned with Serbia and the United States is the strongest ally of Kosovo. The United States, in a statement from the White House, has signaled that it is ready to defend its peacekeeping mission with its NATO allies in Kosovo in the event of an engagement.
Yeah, and to remember the history here, Kosovo was at war. It was a liberation front, and in 2008, it was liberated from Serbia with the help of NATO. And Serbia still does not recognize Kosovo as an official state, although many Western allies do. And there are 50,000 ethnic Serbs living in northern Kosovo that do not recognize Pristina and that government, but recognize Belgrade as their official government.
Yeah, and Serbia could also be empowered by Azerbaijan's recent hostile invasion and the subsequent ethnic cleansing in Artsakh, where 120,000 ethnic Armenians live. However, the important difference between these two cases is Kosovo still seems to have a powerful ally in that of the United States and its NATO backers, whereas Artsakh and Armenia have largely been left to their own devices against Azerbaijan's recent offensive.
Yeah, and it does go to show that when the worldview shifts away from small arms conflicts, it does leave the door open for mass war crimes such as genocide and mass migration, forced migration of people. And that's just an unfortunate side effect. We're going to hope that the global community kind of unites and sees these two problems and takes action.
Indeed.
Now, shifting back over to Greece, Stefanos Kesalakis will lead the largest Greek opposition party.
Yes, so Syriza, which is the main left-wing opposition party in Greece, has replaced its longtime leader, Alexis Tsipras, with Stefanos Kesalakis.
Yeah, so as a young boy, Mr. Keselakis moved to the United States from Greece. Eventually, he worked at Goldman Sachs as an executive, and now he's back in Greece. And his run is unconventional to the Greek political standard.
Yes, so he's used a social media blitz campaign to capture a captive audience within the Syriza party. He largely campaigned off of creating a big tent party ideology, similar to that of the Democratic Party in the United States, that would implement socially liberal reforms. This message seemed to resonate as he was able to beat the former labor minister. However, his victory has been controversial due to unconventional political strategies and his long stint in the United States. Some have even gone as far as to say Syriza party is dead as a result of his victory.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important parts about this story is his platform is more liberal, progressive, social reform. And with all the disasters that have happened in Greece this year, between wildfires, flooding, which we covered earlier, Storm Daniel, and the deaths that occurred from that, all of that resulted in infrastructure damage, damage to local economies, damage to agricultural economies. The people of Greece are going to be looking for a government that can help them through that type of struggle. And this might not appeal to all the voters.
Yes, that's certainly.
All right, this has been the Eastern Mediterranean Times weekly podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And again, in association with the Institute of Eastern Mediterranean Studies in Boston and Emmanuel College, Boston, I'm Martin Mont.
And I'm Joshua Lipke.
Thank you and have a great week.